First of all, ladies and gentlemen, members of the National Party, a Páirtí Gael, be calmed. I may have been a little bit late, but I have prepared a speech. Now, there's a lot of serious things that I want to say today because, in a certain sense, and some of the other speakers, for all their lack of preparation, they spoke very well on the issues at hand, and in particular, that this meeting here today of the Dublin Commons and the Dublin Common leader and Dublin Common members is by way of preparation, if you like, for a general election campaign. And that's a very serious matter. It's a very serious matter for us as a party. It's a very serious matter for Ireland as a nation. It's a very serious matter for everyone who is interested in the future of this country. But having said that, I don't feel I could really begin without making some reference, because this is the first time in quite a long time that I've had an opportunity to speak directly to the party faithful, as it were. Although I have been busy, as you know, we have myself and other party members on reconnaissance missions throughout the country, leafleting and so forth, and getting engaged too with the broader questions and the broader movement, nationalist movement, to make connections with those people who perhaps may not realise that their place is in the National Party and that we are the representatives of what they believe in. And we've had some fun at that too, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have fun at that. We can be a little dour sometimes, I think, when we do politics. And there's no real reason why we should, especially the Irish people. It's un-Irish of us to be dour when it comes to politics or it comes to anything else, because I think is it George Bernard Shaw who said of us is that all their wars were merry and all their songs were sad. Well, we're in a war, so there's no reason to be dour about it. Over the past few months, we have had a little fun. For example, we've had people dressed in unicorn onesies stand across the street from us while we're speaking and calling us crazy. That in and of itself takes some doing. But yet again, it was August, so as funny in August as I've had, August always fills me with that sense of horror that is annual, which is the anniversary of the death of Michael Collins. Because that date, August the 22nd, reminds me more than anything and rises within me the only hatred I do believe I actually have, which is a loathing for the whole apparatus of the Free State system which murdered that man in 1922 and robbed Ireland of its first real leader, as it entered its new nationhood. Remember, Irishmen, what blind greed stole from thee when they murdered Michael Collins. And await the day of vengeance for that bloody crime. Ladies and gentlemen, extremism, This is something we are constantly accused of, extremism, and I don't mind that word at all. Because extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. Now, those who are familiar with the provenance of that phrase will probably be surprised that I use it. And they will be particularly surprised that I use it in the context of talking about a general election. Because we have to appeal to the electorate, and the electorate are always in the centre, aren't they? This is what we are told by the armchair electoral tacticians. James referred to it earlier on. We must moderate, we must moderate our language, moderate our appearance, moderate our beliefs, tailor them to the electoral needs of a winning political party, and become thereby, I guess, Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. Because where else is one going to go? Those parties are formed of focus groups for whom moderation is always the key phrase. But we in the National Party understand, and I stated this at the beginning of my speech, we in the National Party understand that we are not fighting a general election, we are fighting a war. We are fighting a war for the national survival of the Irish nation. And the general election is only one campaign within that war. However important it might be, it is but one campaign within that war. And to win an election on a lie is for us anathema. Because for us to win an election on a lie would be to make a lie of everything we have done and make impossible everything we intend to do. So we must go before the Irish people, as extreme as we are, in defense of liberty, because we regard it as no vice, and we regard moderation in the pursuit of justice as no virtue. This party is already not supposed to exist, according to our enemies. That's back when we thought they were more serious than the unicorn onesies. We actually thought they were a little bit more serious when they threatened us first. So we took those threats rather more seriously, but one of the things they told us at the time that the National Party was founded in November of 2016 is that we would not exist for very long. We are still here, and we are stronger than we ever were before. And then they tried to taunt us that we didn't take part in the local and European elections because we weren't ready to take part in the European or local elections. And the fact of the matter is we will not allow the strategy or the tactics of our party to be dictated by smart remarks made on Twitter. But we have a responsibility to the Irish nation, because I believe with all of my heart and my soul that the National Party is our last hope. And knowing that places upon my shoulders anyway, and I believe places on the shoulders of every person in this room, a degree of responsibility that if we had full notion of it, we would not even be able to stand. But stand we will, in the knowledge of that great responsibility, not to be taunted into mistakes, but to strike when we are ready. We are now We are now probably within 12 months of a general election. We cannot be exactly sure. It is in other people's hands to decide exactly when that will happen. But it is important in the context of ourselves that we start to be ready from here on in and regard every extra month of preparation and every extra week and every extra opportunity to hand out one more leaflet or talk to one more person as a bonus before we go into that election. And when people say we cannot win or we cannot achieve anything in that election because we're too extremists, I think we also have to bear in mind just how extreme the circumstances this country is actually in and the background against which that election campaign will be fought. We have 10,000 homeless people in this country. And here's an extreme statement, yet it is just a fact. If every single non-national were to leave Ireland today, we would have enough houses for Irish people and more left over. If every single non-national were to leave, we would have a labour shortage, which IBEC thinks would be a disaster. But a labour shortage in an economy of supply and demand results in rising wages and working conditions for Irish people, which are being artificially held down at the moment by the fact that our government has opened the doors to the entire world. And SIPTU, and the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, would prefer to endorse the unicorns and tell us that they will have no part in our racism, which is the defence of the Irish working man and woman. Almost from the very moment I was born, I don't know why, I was a strange kid, as I was aware that the burden of carrying the right-wing cause in Ireland was going to fall on my shoulders at some point. I did not realise that SIPTU was going to give me the burden of carrying the left-wing cause as well. If every single non-national were to leave, here's what would happen. We would have our country back. We would have an Ireland not Gaelic merely but free as well. We would have an Ireland not free merely but Gaelic as well. And the position of the National Party that there should be an embargo on current immigration and an assessment of those already here on a point system of contribution and assimilation. How can we be more moderate than that? We must also remember that this general election will be fought against the background of Brexit. Now, if you read your Irish Times, or you exclusively get your information from the state broadcaster, and it's not called a state broadcaster for no reason, you might be under the impression that the British are out to get us again. It's a kind of Gumby nationalism that they've tried to stir up in the Irish people over the past 3 years since Britain decided to leave the European Union. Let us talk about all the wrongs that Britain did to Ireland over the many centuries before. Those very crimes, mind you, that we were not allowed to speak of, that we were not allowed to refer to. Well, the British government were our partners in the European Union, but when it suited the powers that be in Brussels to turn us against the British and to turn us against our nearest neighbours, then we were allowed a Gumby nationalism. Not one which served the interests of the Irish people, not one which served the interests of the Irish economy. We were just allowed the rhetoric of giving out about what Britain had done for the past 800 years. We know what Britain has done for the past 800 years. We know it a damn sight better than Donald Tusk knows it. But we also know for a fact that the geographical proximity of Britain to Ireland means that we must live together or kill each other. And live together is the choice that we would make. Live together as free, independent nations, trading with each other fairly, doing agreements that are in the interests of both countries, neither one taking advantage of the other. What should we have done then in the context of Brexit when in June 2016 the British people voted for it? The very first thing that should have been done was the Irish government should have gone to London and negotiated a bilateral agreement with Britain. Which would have taken account not only of the needs of the Irish economy as it relies upon the British market, but also, and this is a figure that they don't give you very often, is the fact that 90% of the goods we sell into the European market travel through Britain. So if there is to be a hard border, it will not only be along the edges of the 6 counties, but it will also mean that Irish products travelling to the EU, which we are staying a member of because we are supposed to be so dependent upon them, will have to travel out of the EU and then travel back into the EU again. So there will be Irish products going into the British market and taxed as such. And then there will be British products going into the European market and taxed again. And no one has pointed this out. In June 2016, as I said, we could have negotiated a bilateral trade agreement with Britain, and we could have insisted that bilateral trade agreement be incorporated into any withdrawal agreement from the European Union that Britain negotiated subsequently. We could have cooperated with all of our neighbours. We could have cooperated with the British, with the French, with the Belgians, with the Germans, with the Italians, the Spanish, and so forth, to bring prosperity and peace to the entire continent. But that's not what the Brussels elite wanted. The Brussels elite wanted to punish Britain. And they wanted to punish Britain at the expense, most of all, of us here in Ireland. And they used partition, which is not a partition that we want. It's not a partition that we would have, all things being equal, but it is a partition that is there. They were the ones who used one of the British crimes against Ireland, which is that border, against us. And they didn't do it 800 years ago, and they didn't do it 50 years ago, and they didn't do it even 5 months ago. They're doing it to us right now. Now you say, well, a bilateral trade agreement in June 2016 will all be very well, but we can't have that now, can we? Just 3 weeks ago, Boris Johnson offered for bilateral negotiations between Ireland and Britain. 3 weeks ago. Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar, who have admitted themselves that they have no plan whatsoever in place to deal with a no-deal Brexit, said, no, we refuse to speak to you. Europe speaks for us. Well, not in a national party government does Europe speak for us, or anybody speak for us, except us. So it seems inevitable then. It seems inevitable that the general election will be fought against the background of a no-deal Brexit, because Europe is determined to have one, and Parliament in Britain is prorogued. And I don't know what is going to happen to us in that context, because in 2008, I tell you something, is this country ran into a very serious financial crisis, yes? And a lot of people lost their businesses, a lot of people lost their homes, a lot of people lost their jobs, and by the standards that we had become used to, it was an economic crisis of enormous proportions. But it will seem as just a bump in the road compared to what is coming now. And back in 2008, we weren't 250 billion euro in debt. We are today. Now in 2008, no one would lend us a penny, even though we owed nothing. Let us see where we can go and borrow money now that we are 250 billion in debt already. Greece. If you have been watching it, Greece is what awaits us. That level of chaos. And that has to be thrown in to a health system that's already not functioning, to a country that has 10,000 homeless, where we cannot house our own people, we cannot teach our own children, we cannot feed our own people. We are going to throw an economic crisis in on top of a 250 billion euro in debt, and Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar are not a bit worried about it at all. They are more concerned with the fact that Boris Johnson shares with Donald Trump a rather unruly haircut. That's supposed to be our salvation. We are supposed to laugh at the British and never mind what happens. Although, as a keen observer of the media, some of you may have noticed a creeping nervousness over the past few weeks as the realization has begun to dawn that the thing was going to happen, that the no-deal Brexit was going to happen. And when Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament and made thereby a no-deal Brexit inevitable, I don't know if he knows that. I don't know if he's playing brinkmanship with the European Union, but I know these stubborn bastards. We've seen them before. We've seen what they did to us in 2008, and we saw what they did to us when the ERM collapsed in 1992 as well. He may be playing brinkmanship, but over the brink they're going. Now, I don't know how Britain will fare in Brexit. I don't know how Germany will fare in an old deal Brexit. But with all due respect, and no animosity to either, I do not care. I might try to care. I might summon up some faux emotion of caring. But the bottom line is I don't care. Because my only concern, and I think your only concern, and our only concern, and the National Party's only concern is focused on how Ireland will fare. When we say all for Ireland, when we say Ireland always and Ireland only, that is what comes from the bottom of our hearts and the depths of our being. Not policy documents or position papers or platforms, but the primitive urge of a people and a nation to first survive and then to prosper. And in the words of the old Fenian song, though all the world should fall. And it is in that spirit that we will be facing into a general election which I will neither make pessimistic nor optimistic pronouncements. We will have to make logistical preparations. I addressed directly here today some of the Dublin membership, and I urge you to prepare. And prepare again, and if you're working, work harder. And if you're contributing, contribute more. I'm not going to set a target on what constitutes a win from the National Party's point of view in the general election that's coming. It's perfectly obvious, and I think everybody here would think me rather foolish if I said otherwise, that we are not going to form a majority government after that general election. So we have a measure of what we consider a very good day, and we have a measure of what we consider, as we say in Ireland, a midland day, and we have a measure of what we consider a very bad day. Now, I'm not going to speak from this platform as to exactly what that is, because whatever happens, I'm going to have to try and put a spin on it on the day. But most of you who know me well will know whether I'm happy or not from cues other than the words. The words will be all about how, well, it wasn't too bad. But the fact of the matter is, it will be obvious. We will not win an overall majority. We don't even know if we'll win a single seat. We have our targets, we have our plans, we have laid them carefully. What I can tell you is this, is that there will be not one single comment and not one single member of the National Party in any corner of the 26 county state during the general election campaign who will be idle unless he or she is shirking their duty. The national leadership has gone a great distance in preparing a campaign, the like of which Ireland has certainly not seen before from a supposedly small political party in a generation. But that preparation is a paper plan, worthy though I believe it is, worthless of itself alone. It is you who must give it flesh and blood. It is you who must give it corporeal form. It will demand of every person in this room and the other rooms that I speak in around the country, as well as I go to the other constituencies in the other areas in Leinster and Munster and that part of Ulster which is already ours. Well, which is already in the jurisdiction. It will be up to you, the ordinary party member, to deliver a victory which Justin Barrett would not dare to ask you for the sacrifices for over the next 12 months. No political party would have any right to ask of you what I am asking of you over the next 12 months as we prepare for this general election. Ireland, and only Ireland alone, has the right to call her children to her flag at this moment. And only Ireland having the right to make that call, Ireland has made it through the National Party and through the national idea. And so over the next 3 months, extremism in the defence of liberty will be no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice will be no virtue. For the Irish Republic are yes or aye